Hey everybody, Nick here, and today I got a review for you of this little guy right here. This is the Alliance Designs Angry Baby Bear with Ray Laconico. So first off, start with full disclosure. This guy was sent to me as a review sample by the manufacturer. Thank you very much, Alliance, for that. I told them, as always, I'm going to talk about the good, the great, the bad, the ugly. Might be a gem, might be a junk. But they still sent it along, so thanks to that. We still have to assume this is the very best quality controlled one of these we've ever seen, and I'm doing my best not to let that affect my review. Next thing, size comparison. This is actually not a huge knife. Here it is against your Spyderco Delica. So right here it is with your Delica. As you can see, in terms of sharpened blade length, it's a little longer, but in terms of overall size in the pocket, it's actually a little bit shorter. So it's a very compact knife in that way. Here it is against your Spyderco PM2 and your Ontario Rat number 2. See, yeah, definitely not a huge knife here, but again, in terms of blade length, we're in this same sort of vicinity. So there you go, that's good. Next thing, this is a Ray Laconico knife, and you know, honestly, we've seen a lot of stuff from Ray. He's done a lot of really nice designs. He's done some designs I don't love quite as much either, but this is another one of his pieces. So if you're thinking of looking like, wow, that looks like it looks exactly like these other knives, well, yeah, it's same designer. So this is a Ray Laconico piece, as it says right here on the top, in a very nice little touch there. So that's what's going on. And then finally, Alliance Designs. Who the heck is Alliance? What are they doing? Well, this is a new brand. They'd reached out to me some time back, and I went over to their table at Blade Show to handle a bunch of their stuff, because every time a new brand is coming along, especially one where they're making stuff overseas, there are always quality questions. So I went over to their booth and was like, oh, hey, no quality questions. These are good to go. And so that was a nice thing. I don't know exactly where this one is made for sure, but given that it's, RWL 34 and just the overall feel of the thing, I could make a creative guess, and probably be right. I kind of suspect this is a Riyadh. But anyways, so that's, they're working with a bunch of factories, though, overseas, and there you go. So let's go on ahead and jump into the good, the great, the bad, and the ugly of this very interesting little knife right here. So on the good side, start with, it's a nice size. We can see here that blade length-wise, we are coming in here uncontroversially under 3 inches. It's going to be a good thing legally for some people, but it's also a very carryable knife. It's relatively small. It works. There's no real issues there. Next thing, this has a very nice clip. It is a milled titanium clip, but it has a proper amount of spring to it, a good amount of ramp. It just carries well. It's in and out of the pocket unproblematically. Nice clip. No argument there. Next thing, this is unmistakably a Laconico or a Ray Laconico knife. 100%. There is no doubt about that. So that can be a great thing. If you are a fan of his designs, this is definitely going to be one of his designs, and it'll probably appeal to you in that way as well. Next thing, this guy also has another option available. It is a $40, it's $40 more, but it is a carbon fiber handle. And honestly, the carbon fiber one is actually a little more attractive to me. It's a very nice model, and it's kind of unique, but it has a full carbon fiber inlay throughout this area. You can check it out online, and it is a little bit unique relative to this and relative to a bunch of Ray's other stuff. I've not seen much of his work with inlays before, and that one has it. So you might actually consider checking that one out, even if this guy isn't necessarily floating your boat with the speed holes here. Next thing, the finishing on the titanium is actually pretty nice. There are a lot of companies that use sort of a very boring blasted finish here. This is a very light blast, if it is blasted at all, and it works well. It's attractive. I like the finishing here on the titanium. And frankly, on the blade finishing is very nice as well. There are no complaints there, and even the backspace is well finished. Overall, the finishing on this guy is very good. Next thing, this has a nice blade. You can see it's got a nice hollow grind, so it gets actually quite thin behind the edge, which is great. It has a little bit of a complexity to the grind with this front Tonto-looking thing going on here, as well as this curve on the bottom. It's a very complex blade shape, but nevertheless, so you can see there's a fair amount of geometry here. There's a nice swedge on it. It has a sharpening choil down there at the bottom, although with a little tiny bit of recurving from the looks of it. The steel is RWL 34, which is a steel that is absolutely good to go. There are no problems with RWL 34. It's just, overall, it's a pretty nice blade. And especially given that you've got a relatively thin edge here, it does cut things. I'm definitely a fan of the blade. Then finally, on the good side, the action on this guy, absolutely good to go. With zero wrist effort or anything, deploys, no freaking problem. On the shutting side, It's pretty good, too. It's not like, oh my god, fall shutty, but you know what? It works. It's a good action, no real complaints there. So, to me at least, all of that is the good. That you have a great action, a nice blade, a good titanium finish here. You have a carbon fiber handle, which is actually very attractive. It is unmistakably Laconico. It is a nice clip and a nice size. On the great side, the build quality is there. Look, like I said, I'm always worried when there's a brand new maker on the scene, whether they're going to be cutting corners, or whether they're using a bad factory that can't grind worth a damn or anything like that. But no, no, this is good. Has a very good detent, has a good action, a good grind. It is a well-made knife. Alliance, I think, did the custom knife very faithfully, maybe too faithfully in some places, and very well. But that's always my worry with a new maker. But I'll say, after going to their table and handling a bunch of this stuff, as well as some of their other stuff, this is the Pat Hammond Scout here, which is similarly well-made. I'm not concerned about build quality out of Alliance at this point. I mean, certainly they may go downhill, but at least from where they are right now, they're good to go. So, and I have no evidence to believe they will, but yeah, I'm just hedging. So to me, that's what's great here, is that this is absolutely, the build quality is good to go. This is a nicely made knife. On the bad side, to start with, honestly, this design is not terribly novel. I mean, look, I'm looking at this knife. When I first, saw this on the scene, it took me a minute to figure out how this was different from the other knives on the market, right? It is slightly different than the Kaiser Intrepid, mostly in the handle. It's different than the Ursa Minor in that it's got a little bit of change to the blade shape here. It's a little bit taller than the Monterey Bay Min Pin, which is a wider sort of design. And the build quality is definitely better than both of those guys. But the thing is, this feels very, very much like a lot of Ray's other stuff. Honestly, Ray has a little bit of a problem with oversaturating the market, and I feel like this is a perfect example of that. And considering that many of the other options out there are a little bit cheaper as well, the fact that this guy just feels like a bunch of other stuff that's already out there can be a little bit problematic. If you love the look of it, then great, absolutely. There are a bunch of things you're going to love the look of, but yeah, this doesn't feel very different to me. So whatever it is a thing. Next thing, there is no steel marking on the blade. They have this beautiful etch. I should have mentioned that. But they have this beautiful etch on the top here of the maker's name, but they don't tell us what steel it is. It's RWL34. It's fine. I can see what, it's not the most, pride-inducing thing ever. That's maybe why but look, I mean, it's good to go. I'm being a jerk there, but still. Why not just write that on the damn knife? That makes it a lot easier for people, especially if you get it down the road and their website's down or something like that. That just makes it be better overall. Next thing, this is a carbon fiber backspacer. Yeah, right? You can kind of see that. I'll be honest, though, the carbon fiber element of it really doesn't add much. When I first looked at this, you could probably have convinced me this was a G10 or something like that. It's a little different. It doesn't have the porosity and whatnot. But honestly, if it would have reduced the price a little bit, I would have just as soon done G10 there. It wouldn't have changed anything for me. And I feel like that's definitely that's a thing. Next thing, the screws are going straight into titanium here. This is something that happens a lot on the customs from Ray, and it's not something I'm a big fan of. I tend to prefer when you've got screws going into barrel spaces from both sides, or a Chicago screw style arrangement. The reason for that is, let's say you strip out the liner on the other side there, you either need to completely retap this handle or you're screwed. And that's not a beautiful thing. I don't care for that at all. And I'd much rather see them go that extra mile and actually put in a barrel space or something like that. That's a case where it may be a little over faithful to the custom. Next thing, this guy has, the lock bar access is okay. I'd like a little bit more scoop out on this side, make things a little bit easier. This is one of those where you're kind of jamming your finger in and hoping for the best. It's not the end of the world, and the blade stock on this guy is thick enough that it's okay, but I'm not a big fan of that particular issue. Next thing, the flipper tab on this guy is a little bit hooky, meaning that there's a little bit of a hook to the front of it there, and that's not super comfortable on the finger. End of the world? No, I'm nitpicking, but it's definitely a thing. Next thing, I'm going to be honest with you, I don't understand this blade. I mean, I can't say I've ever been in a situation where I felt like I really, really want a little bit of a point in the middle of the blade, followed by a tanto. No. In some ways, this knife would make a little bit more sense if that were a flat edge. Does it hurt much of anything? No, not really. Although one thing it does do is that if you're on, for instance, a cutting board or something, that's not a kitchen prep knife, but you can see there's only a relatively small part of this edge that's actually able to, tut down onto a surface there. So I'm not necessarily a fan of this blade shape. It's not like a problem. It's not bad, but I just don't get it. And frankly, I think it'll sharpen out, or at least I might sharpen it out if I own the knife. Whatever it is, it's just... I don't know. Doesn't really do it for me. Maybe that's the angry part of the angry baby bear. I just don't know. Next thing, this is a, the ergonomics on this guy are kind of weird. In that your fingers are a little bit far from the blade. This area here doesn't feel like a finger choil with these sharp corners up here. And it just, I don't know. I can get it in the hand and it's okay, but there are lots of little hot spots on this guy everywhere, like little corners here, just generally speaking. And I kind of badly want a finger choil on this. I feel like that would just make it fit a little bit better in the hand than it does right now. not the end of the world, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. And actually, generally speaking of the ergonomics, I feel like this knife needs to be melted a little bit. What I mean by that is, not like the pile of slag on the floor melting, but just enough to kind of smooth out all of the various edges. This knife has a lot of polygonal edges to it, right? I mean, it's got like sharp corners here. It's got a lot of corners. It's got a lot of... I feel like every one of these edges would just benefit from being rounded a little bit. The whole knife just needs everything to be a little bit rounded. The edges right here of the swedge need to be rounded down a little bit. The whole thing it needs to melt just a little tiny bit, and then it would be more comfortable in the hand. It'd be more comfortable in the pocket, even like this little area right up top here. Just everything needs a little bit of radiusing. It needs a little bit of melting down, and it would just be, I think it would be better, because this area right here is actually borderline sharp right now. The liner edges are a little bit, I mean, frankly, this should have been called the Angly Baby Bear. There's lots of angles. No? Okay. Anyways, I would just like to see the knife melted down a little bit. I think that would just make it better in the hand, better in the pocket, just better overall. Then finally, on the bad side, the price on this guy is $360. Now, look, this is kind of high. I'm going to be real. That's kind of a perfection price. At this kind of price point in RWL 34 with titanium going straight, they have to be doing everything right and really flexing, going the extra mile, and I don't necessarily know that they are. And so to me, at least, that's what's bad here, is that the price is kind of high at $360. The knife needs to be melted down a little bit. The ergos are weird. I don't get the blade contour there. The lock bar access is so-so. Screws are going straight into titanium. There's no steel marking on the blade, and honestly, it just feels a lot like every other damn knife Ray has made in the last little while here. On the ugly front, there's nothing super ugly. The price is just approaching that. If this hit 400, that would be outright ugly, but it's not great. And so, no ugly other than that. So let's go on ahead and jump into the final conclusion. Final conclusion, a fine knife at some level. I mean, it's a representative piece by a well-known designer. It's a nice size, very nicely finished, good action, nice blade, nicely made. And it is proof that Alliance can make a knife that is very nicely made, and they're working with factories that have what it takes to do it right. The design itself isn't particularly unique for the designer. I mean, it's very clearly a Laconico. It's unique among everybody else, but among his stuff, it's also got some little gripes, a weird blade, some strangeness in the hand, a little bit of extra anger in the angles, so to speak. But, mostly it's pretty well done. Honestly, for me, the biggest question here is the price point. I do my best as I am carrying a knife and preparing for the review to only learn the price point once I am sitting down to do the review. And I had this mentally around $250. That's where I figured this was going to land. Maybe they would impress me at $200 or so, but I figured $250 sounded about where this would be. Then when I saw the price, when I saw that $360, there was an audible like, oh, because it fundamentally changed the character of the review. This is a good knife. It's a nice knife. I like it. But at this price, it becomes a lot less impressive. It really doesn't feel like the two issues are that it doesn't really feel like it's stretching to earn that price point, and there's a lot of competition here. I mean, honestly, look, this is that's a price point at which they really need to be flexing a little bit here. And the carbon fiber, I mean, it feels fine. It's okay. And honestly, the carbon fiber version with the inlay there, that feels a little bit more reasonable. There, it feels more like, wow, okay, this is different. This is something But in this particular model, I'm not necessarily sure. I mean, it doesn't feel super ambitious. RWL 34, it's a fine steel, but it's not like, oh my God, crazy top end or anything like that. There's no lock bar insert. There's no over travel stop. The screws are going straight into the titanium. I mean, the construction, the finishing on it is fine, although, again, use melting, a couple of days in the tumbler. But nevertheless, it just doesn't feel like they're really going the extra mile that's required to earn that $360 price point. And on the other side, there's a huge amount of competition. I mean, very often when I talk about prices being a little high, I'll say something like, well, there's nothing else really like it, so that if you like it, you'll just pay the price. But the fact is, this actually has a bunch of knives that are kind of like it. In fact, you could get a Kaiser Intrepid and the Kaiser Ursa Minor for the price of one of these guys. I mean, so the competition thing is definitely there, given this is better made than both of those, but it's also much more expensive. And so 100%, certainly I'd like to see a little bit of tweak into the angles and whatnot, but the price is the biggest problem this knife has. And so that kind of dictates the final conclusion, right? If you like the design a lot and you don't mind the price, then buy the knife. It's a fine piece. You'll enjoy it. If you love the design, you don't love the price, then look around. Ray's made a bunch of knives like it, and they'll probably make another one in about 10 minutes or so. Let's be real here. And if you don't love the design or the price, then, well, what are you doing this far into the video? Just say it. But overall, though, my feelings are that this is a nice piece. It shows that Alliance can do some very nice work. And ultimately, the question here is, well, how easy do you find this particular price to bear? Does it make you angry? Could this be your baby? Okay, anyways, there you go. Hope this has been interesting to you, and have yourselves just an absolutely wonderful rest of your day. Bye now.